Hello, everyone. We are now live, coast to coast. Welcome to Most Law Firm Digital Marketing Stinks. Finally, someone clears the air on how to compete and win. I'm your moderator for today's webcast, and you will not be able to see me, but I'm available for tech support throughout the presentation. Please use the chat section at the bottom of the Zoom interface, and I'll communicate with you privately. All right, before we get started, I'll just take a few minutes to tell you how to participate in today's webinar. Throughout this presentation, you can submit questions or comments by typing into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom interface. You may submit questions at any time, but as moderator, I'll decide whether to inject them into the conversation or save it for the Q&A session at the end. You'll also have the opportunity to participate in a poll during the presentation, and I'll instruct you what to do when we get to that. Okay, I would now like to introduce Nathan Chapman, President of Firmidable, a strategy-driven marketing and digital agency that works exclusively with law firms. Nathan, who has an MBA in marketing, has over 30 years experience helping law firms all over the country meet their goals for growth and revenue. Okay, and with that, I would now like to turn it over to Nathan to get us started with what we'll be covering today.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm excited to be here. Nathan Chapman, I'm president of Firmidable. When I was first planning out this presentation, or at least an earlier version for it, I had a very conventional title. I was working with a attorney, and we were going to do it live at a law firm conference. And when I sent him the title, he replied, "I don't know, Nathan. I think that title's kind of boring." Well, we don't want to be boring, do we? So I came up with a very provocative title. But while it's provocative, I don't really know that it's unfair. You know, I probably look at more law firm websites and digital ads than anybody you've ever met. And I hate to tell you, a lot of it does stink. So we're going to make sure that we clear the air, and we're going to make sure you learn what you need to know to compete and win. Before I jump into it, let me do a little plug for a companion webinar to this one. This one we did about a month ago, and if you missed it, you could see it live on our webpage, on our website, firmidable.com. There's a webinar on demand page. So that one was branding stand out in a nation of too many lawyers, and it was all about things that you see, things on the screen. Today, we're going to talk a lot of technical things, things that you may not see, but are really important and move the needle. So I think they're good companions to each other. And if you didn't see it, I encourage you to go find it and watch it. So for today, most law firm digital marketing stinks. Finally, someone who clears the air and how to compete and win.
All right, in just a second, you will see a poll pop up with a few options. Simply select your answer, click submit. All right, you should have it now in front of you. What is your level of digital marketing expertise? You're an expert, above average, average, below average, or clueless? All right, we have most people have answered. I'll give a few seconds for a couple more people to finish. All right, a couple more people that haven't finished. Go ahead and submit now, and we will end it. All right, here we go. All right, looks like most people participated, and I'm going to share the results. You should see it now on your screen.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, no experts today. Let's see. We have 9% above average, 36% average. Nothing wrong with that. 45% below average, and 9% are clueless. But you all came to the right place. We're going to try and move you up in that chart by the time we're finished here today. So thank you for sharing that with me. All right. Let me get back my presentation here. So I founded my agency, Firmidable, back in 1991. It was before digital marketing was a thing. In fact, the first website wouldn't be invented until 2 months later. So obviously back then we did things like traditional like television. I still do a lot of that today, but as things began to evolve and I realized I need to have a digital department, I first started learning from the people that I hired. And then at some point I said, I need to invest in myself. And I started going to, digital conferences like in Silicon Valley. So I thought this might be helpful to actually reflect upon why do I study digital marketing? Why did I go to those conferences myself? Well, you might think it was to go to the cool parties, and well, okay, they did have some cool parties. Like here I am at the Google headquarters, but no, I went to the sessions. I did the work. Here I am with my guy Kevin, one of our digital SEO guys. Now, I did not go because I wanted to be Kevin. I need people like Kevin, but Kevin's hands on doing this all day long. I don't want Kevin's job. I went because I wanted to be a better boss, right? I wanted to know more what I'm talking about. And as I hear information, should I challenge it? Uh, that's the filter through which I'm going to talk today because I'm assuming you're the same way. If you're here to get Kevin's job, you're in the wrong webinar. I'm going to teach you what I think you need to know to be a better manager of your digital marketing program. All right, that sound good? Well, at that first conference I went to, I heard a story that I'm going to share with you. There's a bear in the woods, and the bear's coming. And this man, he sits on a log and he puts on his tennis shoes, and his friend says, "What are you doing? You can't outrun a bear." And he goes, "Oh, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." Now, I don't know, that's kind of an old joke I'd heard before. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but the reason it was shared with me and that I share it with you, it's a perfect analogy for the internet. You don't have to do everything perfectly. You probably won't do everything perfectly. You do have to do better than the people you're trying to outrun. So that's going to be our mission. How many things can we do right so that we get ahead and we stay ahead of the people that we're competing with? If you're a small practice, and let's say not particularly type of law that's competitive in a small town, you don't have to do very many things right. If you move to a bigger city, you probably better start upping your game. Or if you're in a very competitive type of law like personal injury, you darn well better do a lot of things right. So let's try and do as many things right as we can. This is how we're going to do it. I'm going to break today's session into this agenda. Our first session is going to be about websites and SEO. Now, if you are one of those clueless people, I might need to tell you SEO stands for search engine optimization. So you can build a website and you can just leave it alone. There's no law against that. But Google prefers it if somebody works on the website every month. So we do that through a process we call SEO. This is going to be my longest section, so don't worry, I'm watching the clock. I'll get to the other sections on time. The second section is going to be search ads, Google ads, LSAs, and paid search, also called pay-per-click. Our third section is going to be about online reviews. Our fourth section will be about conversion. If I get you these leads, are you going to do a good job in turning them into cases? And how can we improve that percentage? And then our last section, we're going to look forward to an uncertain future. What's going on with artificial intelligence as it relates to search engines like Google? Let's start with that first section, websites and SEO. So I'm going to play for you a video that was on the home screen of an award-winning website. This was a national award given to a law firm. They were a business-oriented firm, and it featured this video, which I'm going to play now. If it's a little jerky, that might be the streaming, but it's got these cool animations, big dramatic photos, super duper cool, right? Okay, that was on a desktop. Let's go look at it now on mobile. Here we go. That's it. That's not so impressive, is it? I mean, what's going on here? No, there's no video. It's not even well thought through. Like, for example, studies show that people read more easily when copy is left to right. When you center, it's okay for a headline because that's real short. But the fact that they even center this, somebody doesn't know what they're doing. And yet this was award winning. What's going on here? Well, that's because that was a business oriented law firm and it was super cool, but they knew that they only needed to worry about people on desktop. When it came to mobile, They said, we're going to have a whole different experience, and it's not so much. So that's okay for that business oriented firm. But what about plaintiffs' firms? Well, let me share some data with you. I do work for some business oriented law firms, but by far our biggest category are plaintiffs' firms. So I went to all of them and we looked up the traffic. Was it coming from a desktop or a laptop, or was it coming from a mobile device like a smartphone? And here's what we found. On average, of the websites for our plaintiffs' firms, 56% of the traffic was coming from mobile devices. So mobile is more important than desktops. But even more so, there were bigger categories for many firms. Some were as much as 70%. That's a lot of mobile traffic. Mobile experience is way more important than it is on a desktop for those firms. And what about digital ads? In that case, our average was over 85% of the traffic was from mobile devices. So if you're a plaintiff's firm, we need to really be paying attention to mobile. Well, what does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is you can't have a slow website. You know, the smartphones are little bitty computers taken out away from the house or the office where they don't have Wi-Fi. You know, they can't be loading slow. They're going to have a bad user experience. Users, what we call somebody goes to a website. So they're going to have a bad user experience if it's a slow device. And even more importantly, Google understands that most of their customers are not business people, but ordinary people. And Google's going to punish you if you have a slow website. So, how do you know if you're slow or not? Well, there's a lot of free tools on the internet. Here's the one I like to use, pagespeed.web.dev. So you enter that, and then you get a box here, and you put in your URL like smithlaw.com, and you press the blue button, and it will tell you, are you fast, are you slow? And if you are slow, what are some things you can do to speed things up? All right, well, let me show you some examples of those things. Well, videos and animations can slow you down. That explains why that business firm put the video on its desktop version, but they did not on mobile because they knew that was going to slow them down. Actually, photo images are a lot faster to load, but if they're too big, they can slow you down. So somebody who knows what they're doing can compress the image where it does not slow you down. Pop-ups. Have you ever been to a website where all of a sudden then something pops up and says, would you like to join our email list? Those things can slow you down on mobile. And then the coding. So that's the geeky stuff that actually the websites are made of. So I like to make this analogy. For a long time, I had an old classic car that I really loved. And then at some point, I decided to get rid of it and get a new car. Instantly, overnight, my mileage got better because over the years they'd improved the technology and now we have better, mileage for cars. It's the same thing with websites. If you have an old website, it's probably slower than even the same content on a modern website. So you might look at that if you're not scoring, very highly on your speed test. All right, here's our first stink alert. So here's a website as it's seen on mobile. I did a screenshot from my smartphone. Look at that. It's just a wall of text. I think you'd agree with me. It's not very inviting. Oh gosh, who would want to read that? Not mobile designed at all. Now, here's an example of a good site that's designed well for mobile. See how much more white space there is and a use of colors and just, shorter sentences and, just hold your attention more. And let me particularly show you these brown boxes. So even if you're scrolling through this to read the content, those brown boxes are not going to move. They're going to stay right there. And so the thing to know about that is that when somebody's ready to talk to a law firm, we don't want them to have to go and hunt for you. We call that reducing the friction. So by keeping those boxes the same as even as people scroll, that's a well-designed site for mobile. Those are the things you want to pay attention to. All right, so we're building our website. What kind of things might we put on our website? Well, we talked about we might put videos or animation or photos. Maybe you'll put a map to help people find our offices. Might have a client portal, things like that. What else? Oh, well, we're going to have words, right? Words are important. In fact, some words are key. In fact, those words we call keywords because some words are more key than others. So if you were one of those above average people in our poll, you might say, but I think Google's getting away from keywords. That's somewhat true. For example, these days, Google understands that lawyer and attorney are interchangeable, so it doesn't matter which one you use. And Google is definitely getting better at analyzing a page and saying, what is the page about? But let me tell you one of my favorite stories. I was working with a law firm in Phoenix, and I only did their television. I did websites and digital for other, firms, but not this one. And they were aware of that, so they felt like they were doing pretty well in Phoenix, but not the rest of the state like Tucson. So they asked me, Nathan, what do you think we're doing wrong? So I took a look at their website, and I said, well, here's the problem. You don't mention Tucson on your website at all. It was built by a local guy in Phoenix for a local Phoenix law firm, and he just made the assumption this is all about Phoenix. How is Google supposed to know that you would also like to be seen in places like Tucson if you never mention it? So that's an extreme example of not having the right keyword can really mess you up. Let's look at some other examples. Here's that same firm again that we looked at on mobile. Now we're looking at it on desktop. So here in the red circle, this is the type of law that they do there. So they told me their biggest type of law by far was Social Security disability. They made like 3/4 of their money from that. But they also did workers' compensation, veterans disability, long-term disability, and personal injury. So here we are on their Social Security disability page. Be sure and note that I said page singular. Now, if my client was doing Social Security disability, we're going to have multiple pages. But this firm, they only had one page. And what's worse, they literally only had 3 paragraphs. So on this entire website for this firm, that the most important thing for them is Social Security disability, they only have 3 paragraphs of content. They're going to be in trouble. This is not a very good substantial website. Remember our bear story? If this law firm with only 3 paragraphs and a limited number of keywords, because how many can you have in 3 paragraphs? If they're competing against one of my clients and we've got multiple pages, Google's going to say, my client is outrunning this firm, and they're going to get eaten by the bear. All right, let me take you a little deeper in terms of how do we build pages when we know what we're doing. So most agencies like mine have access to a tool like this. It's something we subscribe to. This one's called SEM Rush, but there's some others out there. This one is called the Keyword Magic Tool. Now, you know it's going to be good if it's got the word magic in it, right? Okay, so for my assignment today, I'm going to create a new page, and it's going to be about Social Security disability appeals. So I'm going to type that in, and I'm going to press the orange button, and I'm going to get some results. Now, here's some possible keywords that are being suggested for me. All right, now I have some other information on the page, like here's volume. So this tool measures how popular is the keywords. Are people, searching for it a lot? That'd be high volume, or not very much, so there's a low volume. But look, there's another column, KD percentage. That means keyword difficulty percentage. So some things might be very high volume, but very difficult for us to rank on because there's a lot of competition for that. Now look at the third line. It's only 56% keyword difficulty, but less volume. So we might decide to, hey, we're going for the high volume, and I don't care if it's difficult or not. Or we might say, let's go for the lower volume, but less competition. There's no right or wrong in that. It's just your strategy, but you want to have well-informed information before you go and pick out your strategy. Okay, if we were doing today's presentation at a live law firm conference, I might have a newspaper in the back of the room, and I might point to somebody in the front row and say, you there, I want you to run to the back. I want you to grab that newspaper, and as fast as you can, I want you to tell me, what is that front page article about? So they're going to do that, and how are they going to decide? Well, they're going to look at the headline, right? That's how today we decide what is an article in a newspaper or a magazine about. We look at the headline. So in this case, the headline is Nathan Chapman speaks at NOSCR. That's a law firm association that had a conference. Okay, well, if I said, tell me something more, there's a subhead. In this case, the audience was mesmerized. So we've learned all of these things before we even read the article. That's how important headlines are. So the same kind of thing exists in the world of Google. All of those little bots go around and they're trying to figure out what is this website page about. So we try and help those bots. Those headlines we call the H1, the H stands for headline, and then we might have subheads that we call an H2, and you can have more than two. You can have three, 10, as many as you want. The ones in the headlines are more important than the ones in the body in terms of what this is about. That would be your H1 strategy. All right, what do we do with this information? Well, here's an example of somebody who was oblivious to how to write a good H1 and using a keyword strategy. All right, this is for a Social Security disability firm. Let's see, they've got the big noun here is claim. Well, what kind of claim? Maybe it's a claim at a pawn shop. And the other big noun is skilled representation. But I don't know, what does that mean? What kind of representation? I don't see the word lawyer anywhere. I don't see things like Social Security or disability. Now, I do see those things in the first sentence, but we just talked about how important the headline is in terms of helping Google figure out what this page is about. Here's another example from a personal injury law firm. So they've decided they're going to put on their blog information about terrible accidents in Chicago where they're located. So in Chicago, a man was killed in this pedestrian collision on this particular intersection. But it doesn't say lawyer. It doesn't say the family can sue and get money for wrongful death. Because of this H1 strategy, this blog post is going to compete with the news, but there's no way this blog post is going to outrank the Chicago Tribune. So this is a terrible H1 keyword strategy. This is why, honestly, you shouldn't write your website content alone. So if we were building your website, most of the time we would interview you and we would ask you what's important and we would write it in a way that was going to make Google happy. And then you could review it and do edits, if you think it needs to be a little different, for you and your audience. But let's say you don't do that. Let's say you're going to do it on your own. Maybe you don't have the budget, whatever. You're just going to do it on your own. Then my best advice is to, as you write, to think, how are the claimants or the injury victims, how are they thinking? What are they more likely to be writing about? And write in those terms, write the way they're asking their questions and work that into your headlines and your copy. All right, I'm going to dive deeper. I'm going to do what we call under the hood, things you don't see with the eye on the screen. So if I'm looking at a website under the hood for the first time, I want to know first, do they have Google Analytics installed? Well, what is that? So Google Analytics is some software. In fact, it's free. Google's happy to give it to you for free. You just need to know how to use it and how to work with it. So that becomes my second question. Once you have it installed, is anybody looking at it? I see a lot of law firm websites where it's installed, but nobody's paying any attention to it. Well, that's of no help. Well, okay, well, what is all this data that this software is collecting? We could have a whole session on just Google Analytics, but I'm going to just give you a few examples. So it might be collecting things that you'd look at, like what web pages get the most traffic. I can see how we would want to know that. The demographics of your visitor, where are they coming from geographically? Are they more likely to be male or female or a certain age group? Those might be things you might want to know. And which pages are they visiting before they convert? That means they reach out to you and say, yes, I'd like to talk to a lawyer, or they leave. We call that bouncing. We study the ones that convert to see what lessons can we learn. Can we make more pages like that? And we study the ones that are bouncing. Maybe we should take that page down, Or maybe we can fix it and make it better so that it becomes a converting page instead of a bouncing page. Much, much more, but you can see how this would be important. Let me give you another idea for something you could do under the hood that I think helps you with your actual results. This is called title tags. It's something you do in the code, but it affects what you see on the screen. So if you do a Google search, you know how you get lots of choices, like a wall of things that you can click on. So the way you decide which to click on is by reading what we call the title tag. There's other information, but the title tag is bigger, right? A bigger font. It's a different color. So it's jumping out. So your eyes looking around, which one do you want to click? This is really important. So in my particular search today, I did it about children's cases for disability lawyers in Chicago. And you can see my title tag is SSI and disability benefits for your child in Chicago. That's actually considered a good title tag because it kind of reflects back the search query, is what we call it, the thing you typed in the search box. And the more that people see what they're searching for, the more likely they are to click on it. Now, let me show you a bad example, and this is going to make more sense. This was in Chicago. Here's the same kind of search, but in Atlanta. So if you don't write the title tag, Google's going to write one for you. And in this case, for Kathleen Flynn, nobody wrote one for her. You can see it actually says about Kathleen Flynn Law of Disability. That doesn't even quite make sense. So that tells me the Google bot wrote it for her. And the even bigger problem is it's just suggesting something because this is her About Us page. She might be great at children's cases, but it doesn't mention children. So in my example, the one law firm's in Chicago and the other is in Atlanta. But for the sake of discussion, let's assume they're in the same city and you do this search and you see the one where it's saying, yes, we help people with children get disability benefits. And this one is just about Kathleen Flynn. You can guess which one's going to get the most clicks. All right, now I want to talk about backlinks. So the most amazing websites in terms of people visiting have lots of amazing content. I'm thinking of things like the New York Times or CNN, for example, all these great articles. And because there's so much great content, lots of other websites will link from their website to this article that's relevant on these bigger important sites, like let's say the New York Times, right? That's what we call a backlink. So Google's aware that these links exist and they reward you for that. They think if you've got a really good website, people are going to link to you. Now, the challenge for us is hardly anybody wants to link to a law firm website. That's just the world that we're in. But there are some things we can do. For example, I literally actively encourage you to join your Chamber of Commerce and your BBB. Most of them are going to have a directory of members. And besides the name and the phone number and the law firm name, etc., they're going to have a link from their website, that directory page to your website. So the value is not in people's clicking through. I mean, if they do, that would be nice. But just the fact that that link exists, Google is aware of it and they're going to give you credit for it. And that's going to be a good thing. Similarly, professional associations do this. The trial lawyers or the Workers' Comp Association or Social Security Association, they usually have if you give them, the right tier of money as your membership, they will have a directory with the link. They understand the value of backlinks. That's why they're offering it to you, and we need them, so I encourage you to sign up for them. All right, law firm directories are another example. Let me give you a tip. Now, you're going to have to study them one by one because there's a number of them. But, the things like Fine Law, the super lawyers, that's what I'm talking about. A lot of them have free listings and a lot of them have paid listings. A lot of times the paid listing is not worth the money. You get something like a logo on their directory and maybe colors and a photograph. That's nice. But because I'm really interested in the link less than, the actual people looking at it on the directory, maybe we don't need to pay for the paid version. And lastly, I want to mention nonprofits. Nonprofits might link to you. So maybe you're involved with a nonprofit. Like I'm president of a local nonprofit in my community, and I do a lot of nice things for them. Like I wrote a web page for them, and they listed me as the author of that page. And I asked them, hey, would you do me a favor? Instead of just putting my name there, would you actually link from that page to my page on my website? Like you, most attorneys have a page of your own on your website. I have a page of my own on my agency website. And they said, sure, because I'm nice to them. They wanted to be nice back to me. That's a good link from that nonprofit to me. Or maybe you're going to speak before an association, and they're probably going to list that upcoming event on their page of events. So instead of just listing, hey, Mr. Jones from this particular law firm is going to speak to us, ask them, could they do a link to your actual bio page on your website? Or let's say it's a group that all the members have multiple sclerosis. Maybe then you should have a page about multiple sclerosis on your website, and we link to that page. It doesn't have to be your homepage that gets the link. Okay, I told you that was the longest section. We're ready now for the second section, which is about paid search ads. Let me start with an overview. All right, here I've taken a common Google search and I had to scrunch it down to make it all fit on one page. All right, let's go through what the different sections are. They won't all show up every time, but they could. So here at the very top, we have a type of ad we call local services ads. They're the ones with the little picture. You have to be actually a service like a lawyer or a doctor or a plumber, something like that to get those. The next type of ad is a paid search ad, also called pay-per-click. Now, these don't have pictures, but they're also broader, more types of control. And, you know, you don't have to actually say, I want a lawyer. Maybe it's like what to do after a car wreck. I didn't actually mention lawyer in that. These kind of ads could appear. In a third section, here's some Google content. Maybe it has a map. You have to be in the right part of the city compared to the searcher, okay? And then there's some frequently asked questions. We call these snippets. A little bit later, I'm going to tell you how can you get listed there. All right, and then down here, we have what we call organic, the website listings. Isn't that interesting? Look at how much scroll we had to do to get to whoever's number one. I mean, it's like a big deal. Hey, I want to be number one for my website. And yet we still had to scroll past all of this stuff. Wouldn't we rather be up here? Well, yeah, we would. The only problem is up there, we have to buy the ads. So ideally, if you have the budget, you would do both. Well, why both? Well, we like the ads because they're truly at the top, lots of control. We can do a lot of things fast and frankly for less money than it costs to build a new website. But down here at the website listings, we like those because we don't have to buy the ads. If you have a good website and you're doing good SEO, yeah, you pay for the SEO, but it's still usually a better, less expensive cost per lead than it is when you buy the ads. So ideally, you get the benefits of both if you can. All right, remember our section now is about the ads, so I'm going to focus on those. Here's a search ad, like a pay-per-click ad. Nothing wrong with it, perfectly clean and readable. But if somebody really knows what they're doing, you can tell Google you have these extra features that you're willing to put in your ad called assets, like the picture, right? The eye goes there because there's a picture. And notice it's bigger, right? We would like to have a bigger ad. We call that more real estate because if nothing else is going to shove the other ads a little farther down the screen. And look how somebody might just start to look at it and they go, oh, wait a minute, I need to apply, or no, I need to appeal. And they might jump to the right section right away. That might help them convert better. So this is a better ad on the right. Another way you can improve your digital ad campaign is through the use of negative keywords. Now, a while ago, we spent a lot of time talking about positive keywords that we're going to use to attract the right people. But sometimes you get people coming to your digital program and you don't actually want them. And especially if it's an ad where you're paying per click, you really don't want them. You don't want the wrong people, right? So if you know who those are, you can tell Google, hey, if people type these words, I don't want it. For example, maybe you're a personal injury lawyer and you don't do med mal or slip and falls. So you say, if they type in, personal injury lawyer to sue my doctor, if they put the word doctor in there, we don't want them. Don't show them an ad. Things like that. So all kinds of law, you might be able to think about what are some negative keywords that if people include that, we don't want them. You just need to keep studying your field and know it really well. Like in workers' comp, as we studied that, we realized there were a lot of people who are really looking for an employment lawyer. They just thought workers' comp in the public, people get mixed up. They say, oh, something at work, I want a workers' comp lawyer. Well, not really. If it's like racial discrimination or gender discrimination, something like that, you actually want an employment lawyer. So you'd put those kind of negative keywords in your digital campaign if you're workers' comp. You just need to keep studying the results and see what was a wasted ad. So disability help would be a fine phrase, but they might be looking for help with ADA rights or how to get one of those parking passes so you can park closer to Walmart, right? You want to use negative ads. Okay, I've just told you a bunch of ways to improve your campaign, but I've saved number one till now. What is the number one mistake I see law firms make in pay-per-click? It's relying too heavily and mismanaging broad match keywords. Okay, what the heck is that? Let me show you. There's three types of things that we call keyword match types. When you're setting up your digital ads, you're going to have to make a choice. So these first two are okay. So in my sample here, I did disability lawyer. This first one is an exact one. Now, exact still means we can have synonyms. So if somebody puts in attorneys and we put lawyer, that's fine, right? I'm sure you would agree it's fine. And if they put in extra words like an adjective, like they would like to find good disability attorneys, that's fine. That would be considered a match. Now, let's broaden it a little bit. We're going to do a phrase match. In this case, the meaning of the phrase. So I'm still bidding on disability lawyer for my campaign, and I would be willing to take something like SSDI appeal lawyer. I didn't say disability at all, but that's close enough. Google understands we would like to show them an ad, and sure enough, we would. But that third section is where people go wrong. They select broad. Broad sounds good, right? We would like to have a lot of people coming to us, but we don't want the wrong people coming to us. So it's so broad, they call it in the realm. I don't even know what that means, but it's something bad because look, it's so broad that disability lawyer could show you a result like the best personal injury attorneys. I think you'd agree with me, that's way too broad. Personal injury attorneys are not disability lawyers and vice versa. So you want to be really careful if you're selecting broad. In fact, here's a campaign that we took over. We first studied what they were doing and what did we think about it. Of the money being spent, only 14% of the digital ad budget did we think was well spent. 86% we thought was being wasted. So you can really waste a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing. All right, our third section, online reviews. Why are online reviews important? Well, people pay attention to them. Believe it or not, studies show that people trust online reviews more than what their friends or their family think. Isn't that amazing? Well, it's true. It's like mom may have one more opinion, but online, these reviews say this is a good or a bad product. Well, there's somebody else who cares about reviews, and that's Google. Google likes to make good matches. If one of their searchers is looking for a business or a law firm, they think if you're any good, you've got a good review score and you've got a lot of reviews. So the amount and the score on your reviews is one of the most important ranking factors in the Google algorithm. You have to pay attention to them if you want to beat the people you're competing with. This is the best way to get more and good reviews. I've seen people do all kinds of things, like just verbally ask people, send them a letter, give them a QR code, but it's hard to beat this. I I, I don't know if you've ever gotten this. It's called a reputation management platform, but I get them like from my dry cleaners or my oil change. How was your dry cleaning? If you liked us, please give us a review. It goes right as a text to my smartphone. My smartphone's already connected to the internet. It's very easy to click the button and you give a review. This firm, when we started, they had a 4. That's not a bad score, 4 out of 5. They had 76 reviews. I've seen worse, not bad. Today, they've got a 4.7. I think you'd agree that's a lot closer to 5 and over 1,300 reviews. It is hard to beat a program like this for getting more good reviews. But what's the number one mistake I see lawyers make when it comes to reputation management? Well, it's actually that very few of them will reply to reviews, and you should reply to all of them. If it's a good review, you should thank the people giving you the review, but I'm not doing it because I'm polite. I'm doing it because other people are reading that review. The communication is not important between you and the reviewer. It's between you and all those hundreds, if not thousands of people reading the reviews. So if it's a good one, you can say, thank you, Mr. Smith, for that 5-star review. That's one reason we've been dedicated to helping injured victims for 50 years, here in Florida. So with that, I worked in some extra information that we're dedicated and we've been doing it for 50 years. That's not something Mr. Smith actually answered in his review, but I put it in because I'm giving extra information to the people reading the review. Now, what if it's a bad review? The lawyers always tell me, oh, I can't get into the particulars of their case. I'm not telling you to do that. You don't need to do that. You should not do that, but you do need to reply. Studies show that if it's a negative review, it's kind of like political advertising. If you don't respond, people think it must be true. So I've seen lots of times where the lawyer will say, I don't even know who that is. We've looked it up. We never represented this person. Well, that's a great response. Say, Mr. Smith, our records do not show that we ever represented you. Please call my office if you would like to discuss. So I don't care about Mr. Smith. I care about all those other people who are now reading and go, wow, that nut, Mr. Smith, he didn't even know who his lawyer was. He's immediately dismissed. Now, what if you did represent them and, maybe you lost the case? That happens. All right. Well, they don't actually expect you to win every case. You just need to sound professional and caring. And so you'll word something like, I'm sorry, that you were not successful in your case. Unfortunately, this is a very difficult competitive field of law. But I'm happy to say we win most of our cases and we've been very successful for 50 years. Feel free to call our office if you'd like to talk about, your case. You just need to sound professional and the public will agree, yeah, they can't win them all. All right, here's my fourth section. How do you convert those leads into cases? There's probably a whole session we could have about this, but I'm going to focus on the thing that I think moves the needle the most, and that is ongoing training with your intake team. Here's the way you can do it most effectively. You can set up, or if you use an agency like mine, we'll get you set up with a call tracking system that includes recording the calls. You know how you'll go call a place and they'll say the call may be recorded for quality assurance? This is that quality assurance part. All right, so this system that I use is called CallRail, but there's some others. So it tracks every call and it shows you this dashboard. My team will kind of spot check on this to see how it's going, and you'll have your own login, and you should spot check on it yourself because we can learn a lot. Now, here's the callers. There's their name, their phone number. Here's how we got them. Was it a digital ad or the website or a TV commercial? That we're going to want to study one category versus another. Here's the length. Now, I like to study the short calls. You can sort it by duration. If it's a 10-minute call, I'm going to assume that was a good call because otherwise, why are you on the phone with them for 10 minutes? I want to know, why was these calls so short? What's going on here? So you see the blue button on the right, we can play and listen to the recording. Listening to those recordings, here's the 3 biggest categories of things that we have learned. First, too often messages are not answered live. It goes to voicemail. Now, sometimes that's fine. Sometimes people will leave a voicemail, but other times I've heard the click, they hang up. So we want to minimize that. And sometimes when they do leave the voicemail, you can get them back on the phone, but sometimes it's hard to get them live. In fact, maybe after they left you a voicemail, they called somebody who answered the phone and they already hired a lawyer, and you never even know what went wrong. All right. A second problem I see is that a lot of the callers, they're talking, they're frustrated and they're talking a long time. And so your team needs to be well trained in order to professionally and politely guide the conversation into what's important so that we, get the job done and get that intake done well. And the third one, this is the most interesting to me because I never would have understood it if I hadn't listened to some of these calls. So people will call up and say, more than you think, where are you located? And maybe answer something like, Sioux City. Oh, and they say, oh, okay, thank you, goodbye, and they hang up. So what just happened there? They assumed that you had to drive to the law office and Sioux City was too far away. So they may be, a type of law where you can actually help them over the phone. So by studying that, you would learn you don't answer the question. You would say, well, we help people all over the state, but we're located in Sioux City. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Dubuque. Oh, okay. Well, we help people from Dubuque all the time. How can I help you? These are things you can learn. Our last section, what's the future, and especially with AI coming? So, when the internet was first created, the Google search engine started saying things like, and we need to help people find the right website. But later they realize, well, we're not necessarily in the business helping people find websites. We're in the business of helping them find information. And that's not exactly the same thing. This has been going on for a while. Here on the left is a search engine result. There's my client. They're listed there. That's the search results. But actually, the eye might go to this thing over in the right because there's pictures. It's very eye-catching. This is not a search result per se. It's what we call Google Business Profile. And it's very popular because it's got the pictures. So somebody should be working on this. In fact, through SEO, we're going to work on this to keep this optimized because it's very powerful. But they may skip your website entirely. They can get the phone number. There's frequently asked questions, all kinds of information. They can get there and not even go to your website. Here's another example. Remember earlier we talked about those frequently asked questions and the snippets? Somebody might look at one of these questions, like this one here in the middle. Can I see my own doctor for workers' comp in Washington State? Here's an answer from my workers' comp firm. Yes, you can in Washington State. That might be enough, and we never go to the website. That's a little frustrating, and it might get even more frustrating as artificial intelligence grabs information off possibly your website and doesn't send people there. So this is an example from an AI answer. Do I need a lawyer to help with special education law in New York? Here's my AI answer. It starts to give you information here on the left. Now, the different AIs do different results. This one does give you the source, and I'm happy to say my client here in the middle is one of the sources. If they're going to grab our information, I would appreciate that you credit with us, and maybe people will go to my website. Here's another sample example. In this case, I asked, tell me about Nathan Chapman of New Orleans. So it starts off fine. I'm the founder and president of Firmidable, a national and marketing consulting agency for law firms. All right, they nailed it. But then there's more information, including down here. It says I have an MBA. Well, that's true. And I've been a faculty member at the School of Law since 2013. No, wait, what? But the good news is I was promoted to associate professor in 2018. Okay, none of that is true. I'm not a lawyer and I don't teach at a law school. This is just wrong. So we call this a hallucination. So it's an evolving field. Can you get this information cleared up? You can hopefully figure out who's had this bad information and contact them. It's a frustrating thing. I'll be honest with you. The other frustration, of course, is how do we get listed if they might be skipping websites? Again, it's evolving, but the best answer today is you do the same thing you do when you want it to be listed as those snippets. So here I'm showing you an example of a snippet. How do you get to be included as a snippet or also AI? Well, the best technique is to write your website page in a very how-to sort of theme. Make it the way you're kind of answering, because how-to is very popular, very conversational, And then you put that important information near the top of the page. Google assumes that if it's near the top of the page, it's more important. And then you're more likely to show up as a snippet and in AI. All right, we have covered a lot of information and we covered it in this agenda. We first talked about websites and SEO. We talked about the paid search ads. We talked about how to improve your online reviews. We talked about how to improve your conversion of leads to cases. And we talked about the evolving future of the search engines and AI. A reminder, be sure and check out our recorded webinar. There's a good companion to this one about branding. You can find it on the Firmidable website at our webinars on demand page. And while today we talked about a lot, it was of a general nature. I just wanted to make you an offer. I'd be happy to talk to you free, one-on-one, to talk about your situation and see if I can give you any advice. All right, let me see with our moderator if we have time for any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. So we have a couple questions we're going to answer, read aloud, and have you answer, Nathan, really quick. But as a reminder to everyone else, you can still submit questions through the Q&A pane, the questions pane down at the bottom of your Zoom interface. Just click that and submit a question, and we'll read aloud. All right, one of the ones we got was, Nathan, do you still recommend television marketing today?
Well, thank you for asking that. It's not only how we started, we definitely do a lot of television today. Television is still a big thing. Yes, we live in a world where people are watching Netflix, at night a lot, but especially, there's a lot of hours in the day and people have the TV on for company, especially in daytime. Like turn on your TV, you're going to see lots of lawyer commercials. It's still a big thing. And what's interesting, not only do I see this, but I have friends who run digital agencies that work for law firms. What we all see is that it helps your digital program work better. That wall of results that you can get, they might skip over some and say, hey, I think I've heard of this firm. And that's because of the branding that we do with television.
All right, just one more quick question, and anybody has any more, you can still submit. But the last one is, what do you think about live chat and bots to answer questions by visitors to a website?
That's a great question. I absolutely do believe in live chat, and I believe in live chat more than bots. So you probably know what we're talking about. You go to a law firm website, and it says, "Hey, can we help you with any questions?" So I'm not a fan of the ones that are bots. Maybe as AI gets better, they're going to get better. But right now, I think some of them give some stupid answers and are frustrating. But it is good to have a live person there. We live in a world where people don't like to talk on the phone so much. They like to text. And because of that, they could just call us, but more people will likely respond to you if you also have the option where they can interact through a texting type of thing. They're not going to give law firm advice. You don't want them giving legal advice. They're just going to say, after a couple of preliminary screening questions, would you like to talk to a lawyer? And then hopefully the people will say yes, and they get you connected. It's just a faster way and a more effective way to get your traffic converted into more leads and cases and revenue.
All right, we did get a couple more questions. First one is, what is a manageable amount of blog posts or website updates that a solo attorney can make to increase traffic?
Oh, that's interesting. Manageable, I think was the key word. I guess it depends how much time you have. You know, Ideally, it would be weekly. That's a lot. I know very few people who do that. So then we say, okay, well, can it be twice a month? If not, could it be once a month? It is better to be on a regular schedule. I would say do once a month than three every other year. It is figure out what you can do and then, try and be disciplined and stick to it. It helps in that respect to have that kind of discipline.
All right. And then, do you see results from Google paid search ads? Who can help me determine how much to spend?
Well, that would sounds like a perfect thing for one of those one-on-one consultations. So I don't know what kind of law you're in, and I don't know how competitive your area is. So all those digital ads are ultimately priced in an auction, and so the prices in your area might be different than prices in another area. So those would be the kind of things that we would look into for you. But it definitely has a very good track record. So I would encourage you, let's look into it for you.
All right, and no more questions. So that is all the time we have for today. Of course, if you have other questions, you can always contact us directly. Once you leave today, the webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation. We would appreciate your feedback. It will automatically pop up in your browser as soon as this ends in a few moments. You will also receive a follow-up email within 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. Okay, on behalf of the entire team here at Formidable, thank you for joining us today. Unfortunately, we will not be validating parking. All right, now go get some great clients today.